Hi everyone, this is Madison and Jocelyn, and today we will be talking about passive and active transport.
First, we'll be talking about passive transport. There are three major types of passive transport. The first is diffusion.
Diffusion is the movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration, or down the concentration gradient.
Here we have two different substances, a solute and a solvent.
The solute is the substance that is being dissolved. The solvent is the substance doing the dissolving.
The solute is typically a solid, while the solvent is typically a liquid.
Diffusion will occur until the concentration everywhere is the same, or equilibrium has been established.
A few factors affect the rate of diffusion, including temperature, pressure, electrical currents, and molecular size.
The second type is osmosis, which is the diffusion of water across a semi-permeable membrane.
A greater osmotic pressure tends to indicate that water will more likely flow in that direction.
There are three types of solutions that cells can be in. The first one is hypotonic.
In a hypotonic solution, there is a lower concentration of solute and higher concentration of water outside the cell than inside the cell.
Since the membrane of the cell is only permeable to water and not the solute, water will flow from outside the cell to inside the cell, going down the concentration gradient.
This can lead to lysis or bursting of the cell in animal cells. Plant cells, however, have a cell wall, so they will not burst. Instead, there will be an increase in turgor pressure as a result of the vacuole filling with water.
The second solution is a hypertonic solution. In a hypertonic solution, there is a higher concentration of solute and a lower concentration of water outside the cell than inside the cell.
Water will flow from inside the cell to outside the cell. In animal cells, this can lead to crenation or the shriveling up of the cell.
In plant cells, the vacuoles will lose water and the cytoplasm will shrink. This is called plasmolysis.
The third solution is an isotonic solution. Here, both the concentration of water and solute will be the same inside and outside the cell.
Although no net change of water occurs, there is still movement of water across the membrane.
The third type is facilitated transport.
Diffusion and osmosis occur across a membrane without the use of carrier proteins or other mechanisms. However, facilitated transport is a method of passive transport using carrier or a channel protein.
Here we have a diagram showing the transportation of solute across the plasma membrane using a carrier protein.
The carrier protein changes shape in order to allow the solute to pass through the membrane.
And that's all for passive transport. Now on to active transport.
Active transport is the process of transporting a molecule against its concentration gradient, or from areas of low concentration to areas of high concentration.
Unlike passive transport, active transport requires energy. This energy is typically ATP. One example of active transport is the sodium-potassium pump, a type of carrier protein.
The purpose of the sodium-potassium pump is to move sodium ions outside the cell and potassium ions inside the cell.
First, three sodium ions from inside the cell bind to the pump.
Second, ATP splits into ADP and a phosphate group. The phosphate group attaches itself to the protein.
Third, the carrier protein changes shape, allowing it to release the sodium ions outside the cell.
Fourth, two potassium ions bind to the carrier protein.
Fifth, the phosphate group is released.
Lastly, the carrier protein changes shape, allowing it to release the potassium ions inside the cell.
Another type of active transport is bulk transport. Bulk transport occurs when large molecules, such as proteins, polysaccharides, and other nucleic acids, use vesicles to enter or exit a cell.
Bulk transport can be further divided into two categories, endocytosis and exocytosis. Endocytosis is the process in which cells take in substances by forming vesicles around the material.
First, a portion of the plasma membrane invaginates to envelope the substance, then the membrane pinches off to form an intracellular vesicle.
There are three types of endocytosis. The first one is phagocytosis.
Phagocytosis occurs when large materials such as food particles or other cells are taken into a cell by a vacuole.
The second one is penocytosis. Penocytosis occurs when liquids or very small particles are taken in by a vesicle.
The third one is receptor-mediated endocytosis. Receptor-mediated endocytosis occurs when molecules bind to specific receptor proteins, a coated vesicle forms, and the molecules are taken into by the cell.
The second type of bulk transport is exocytosis. Exocytosis is the process in which an intracellular vesicle fuses with the plasma membrane as secretion occurs.
And that's it. Thanks for watching our video on passive and active transport.